people that you're talking to and alluding to are so sharp and so shrewd. They love to start fights. They love to start controversy. They are easily far ahead of what the average person would ever understand. If people walk into these things, they don't get it. And let me tell you another side. George, you're a broadcaster, and were for a long time. There are all too many demagogues on radio now. Hiding behind the flag, hiding behind patriotism, hiding behind economic wisdom and all the rest of it. And they're really out in many cases for nothing other than their own ego gratification, self-indulgence, self-aggrandizement, and all the rest of it.
Ratings. Don't leave out ratings and money.
Well, money comes, yeah, you bet, big money and ratings. There are egomaniacs on talk radio now who are catering to, pandering to, encouraging, inciting, sowing in the human mind fear, paranoia, and reflexive responses to things that would otherwise require and beg for intellectual wisdom and connotative meditation. They're not getting it. They don't want it. They're pushing the panic button on people. And I'm not going to name names, but there are fearmongers in talk radio who are doing a terrible disservice to this country.
It is that is absolutely true, and it's because the listening audience gets a certain rush from having its tail pulled.
Oh, they love it. Absolutely, they love to get afraid. It's exciting, it's fun, it's different, whatever. Oh, my God, and they run around telling them, oh, the world's going to end, this is going to happen, oh, my God. And these people on radio have an ability to paint a patina on relatively innocuous events and make them sound terribly dangerous and threatening. Now, that's not to say we're not under a lot of threat, and we don't face a lot of danger, because God knows we do. The Constitution's in tatters and all the rest of it. We're at the hands and in the hands of the most evil despots and dictators you can imagine. And I don't mean just one dictator. There are a lot of dictators in this government. They act like fascist dictators anyhow. So what we have here is a need that is so incumbent upon the listening public to pull back when they think they've got the big picture, to step back 5, 10 steps and then take another look and say, wait a minute, I didn't have the big picture. There's much more going on here. And then look at the conduit from which they got this initial hit in the first place. Look at the individual or individuals involved. Are they pandering to fear? Are they pandering to paranoia? Yes, in many cases, they all do. And it's, as a broadcaster, George, I know you're aware of this. Very few people in this industry will admit to that, and very few listeners will understand it, but it's happening.
And you'll see it on a lot of websites, too. There are websites for different political persuasion blocks that actually market to fear. On my website, urbansurvival.com,
right.
there's I'm trying to think what my ads are, but it's like Clif's speed reading software and a couple of other fairly innocuous things. And Clif's website, halfpasthuman.com, has no advertising on it. And
I couldn't go that route. I had to choose an intellectual honesty if I was going to pursue this, because the work itself demanded it. So
right.
Basically, I don't care how many people visit the site. We have very few readers, really, but
right.
If we're going to make a prediction, we put it out there and we keep it up on the site, and then we also allow the individuals that are subscribers to download it on PDF so they can come back and say, call us rather rude names when we're wrong. Because frequently we are wrong, and
that's okay. Better. You're learning.
That's okay,
you're growing. See, the problem with talk radio now is that the listener is so malleable and so easily led, even by people who are pretending to be patriots. They're still pandering the bottom line, and that's fear, and they're marketing it, and they're thriving on it, and they're profiting on it, and it's really tragic to watch. You see it, George. You see it, Clif, and many of you listening understand, I'm sure, what I'm talking about. And you've got to be careful, whether it's on Fox or on any network on the radio. These people are out there, and they're manipulating the masses who think they're being informed, and they think something that is not important is all of a sudden hugely important, and they run around like a chicken without a head in this grip of fear and paranoia, and it's really got to stop. It's got to stop,
but
but it won't
the problem with it all is that this is it's actually the same issue that I run into. It's very easy for me to track fear in all of its bespoke terms, all of the frightened, trembling, and et cetera,
right.
to go into describing fear, but to get towards the more subtle emotions that are actually the more powerful. For instance, you can have a lot of afraid people, but it's very difficult to make them go to the third order of linguistic effort, which is actual action. So it takes a lot to motivate these individuals from that fear stage, but you can keep them trapped in the fear.
Oh, they're
absolutely dithering all the time.
They're perfect word. They're trapped and dithering in a box of fear. They are.
The issue if you want, the social engineers, though, is how to go beyond that. They have yet to succeed. So I have to take issue with your particular characterization that these people are very skilled. I actually find them to be somewhat crude in their methods because I've long surpassed the ability to pick up those kinds of levels of emotion, and we actually pick up a great deal more than merely the fear, although we're still trapped ourselves in getting extreme language, and we can't really do much in the way of nuance, which is why we have a tendency, for instance, to avoid political sites.
Very well said, and I thoroughly understand it, and you're absolutely correct. All right, stand by. We'll take a little break, come right back. We're going to move toward, I'm not going to call it predictions, we're going to move toward what the data indicates is likely to happen as we continue with Clif and George. Okay, Jeff Rense, back to George and Clif. And gentlemen, let me ask you if you have any overlays in your research on this. George is the economist, Clif is the brilliant computer programmer, and together they have come up with a means of reading, again, the collective unconscious on the Internet around the world, and in a precognitive kind of paradigm have been able to come up with not predictions, but indicators of great stress, buildups, and release points, which is just fascinating. But the American public is so easily now led by either the government lies or the so-called patriot broadcaster hustles. They're all doing the same thing, whether they're working for the same master or not is irrelevant. But this society really, some of them talk about concentration camps. That's BS. You don't need concentration camps. People are already in concentration camps. They're in debt. They've got jobs that are failing. They've got families. They're trapped. They're stuck. Half of them have upside-down mortgages. What the hell do you need concentration camps for? This society is truly enslaved to a very carefully created set of circumstances from which it is not going to extricate itself en masse. It isn't going to happen.
Can you run for office?
Do I sound that dumb?
We'd vote for you.
No, but George, remember, I personally have given up voting.
It's an exercise in absolute futility and stupidity.
Correct.
Unless you're voting in your local city election and you have a vested interest, or you've got a candidate who really gives a damn and on the city council might make a difference. Other than that, forget about it. It's long since over. And thanks for the kind words, but what I'm saying is this is a very carefully and cleverly established national system of varying levels of castes and concentration camp-oriented mental, psychological, financial, and social paradigms from which people cannot extricate themselves. They're stuck.
I don't know that that's true in the broader sense.
Well, I'm talking about the immediate sense right now and where we are. Now, in the long term,
but also
I don't know.
Imagine a situation that could change overnight.
Well, that's what you're all about, you guys, and that's why you're on the program, because things can, and we don't know for sure. That's right. And we don't know for sure when or how, but the data that George and Clif have, and we're taking a long time to get to the punchline here tonight, but there's a reason for that. We've got the time, and I want to hear from them all about this before we get to the punchlines, which are pretty powerful. So, Clif, go ahead. It's your turn.
Well, because I was going to say, in my view, I've actually stopped caring a great deal about the political machinations of everything and the great thrashing around that's constantly presented by the global media stream.
Step one toward personal spiritual liberation.
Correct. But also, it arose out of a rather disconcerting view of what's going on with the biosphere. And it arises from a weighted analysis that I put forward, saying to myself, okay, yes, there's all this stuff going on. There's all these nasties running around being terribly stupid. Yes, the destruction of, abusive capitalism ultimately ends in fascism. But is that going to be meaningful over the next few years? And I have to say, my analysis tells me that it is not going to be particularly relevant to a great number of people, simply because of the biospheric degradation as a background against which all that is being played.
Talking about survival, aren't you?
Correct. So it's very much a situation of, here you are, you're a citizen of Rome, you've got Caligula running around marrying people to mules and proclaiming them emperors for the day, but at the same time you happen to sniff the air and, isn't that smoke? You know, it's kind of like, well, maybe we should be paying attention to the fires that are going on in the background and some of the other less upfront noise.
Well, as I said earlier, what I see, and I'm sure you understand, and many of you listening understand, all of the factors in this perfect storm of manifestation this year are becoming blatantly obvious now.
And it gets kind of boring, to be honest. We've been going on about it for a number of years now, and George and I just can't really get a whole lot of enthusiasm for the economic aspect of things, because some 6 months ago we were saying to ourselves, boy, the poor parents in the year 2008. And why would that be? Well, because most of those parents of college-age kids are going to run into a huge shock this fall when their kids don't go back to school because of the total breakdown of the funding system for the colleges.
Right.
And we've seen it going long enough, Jeff, that I extricated myself from being a senior manager in the higher education field, which was my field of choice until about 2.5 years ago. And I looked at Clif's data, I looked at the underlying economics, and said to myself, all this here stuff's going to blow up at some point, so why don't I make a move before it becomes mandatory that I move?
Right.
And my wife and I chose to get a little place out in the sticks and raise goats and do a little farming.
Yeah.
And it's not like we couldn't have. The software has the capability to do things like pick the all-time high of Microsoft and so forth, but our emphasis has been on making more of the fundamental change down at the warrior core kind of level. And getting unplugged from the addiction to paper assets, and shininess of new cars somehow equates to your value as a human. Those kinds of hypnoses.
Right. Our toys define our worth on the planet.
Yeah, he with the most toys wins.
Yeah.
And that, we find, is a very temporary aberration within the mental structure, entirely non-supportable, non-sustainable, and by assuming survival into 2018. By that point, our data suggests there will be a radically new mindset, pretty much globally for the populace as a whole. And it won't be a question of competition, because survival will be cooperation at a level that we're not yet prepared to describe.
Not yet prepared to describe, and fewer prepared to face. Hold on, be right back. Okay, welcome back. Glad you're along on this Friday night. George and Clif are here, and these gentlemen are just doing some amazing things. All right, I'm not quite sure where we are when we pause there. There's so much to talk about. Can you guys stay a little longer tonight?